Yo, what's up guys? Today we're going to talk about what to gem in a specific rune. I have a specific Discord chat for that, and in that Discord chat it's called the What About This Rune, and that's just simply all about saying, okay, you have a rune, you post it in here and people can react to like, okay, what should you post on them? But I actually went through a bunch of them to kind of explain my thought process on these. If you're still not sure, just join the Discord, first link in the description, and you can ask ahead in here as well. But just for you to get like a general idea of like, okay, what should you be focused on when you're gemming in your stats? A big concept is, okay, who is going to get this rune? If you already determined who's going to get that rune, it is a lot easier because then you go for the stats specific to that unit. Whereas if you're not doing that, you could go for, okay, I'm going to make this rune just an all-round rune, that it can be used on anything, or in a certain way where it's not completely destroyed, but then usable later. Also, a thing which we'll talk about in a second is that flat stats might be better than you expect, but we're going to talk about that in a second later when I have some examples with also flat stats. So for this video, gonna go through like a few of the examples that I've seen within my Discord, and then talk about what I would do and what is the thought process about it. So this rune, first of all, very good rune. Where could you place this on? I would say that my eyes go towards a option of a Chandra, if you were to put HP over the attack. Also, an Assure would be pretty good with HP over attack, but you could also make it somewhat into a damage dealer by putting attack percent over the defense. However, in most cases, damage units still rather have HP rather than defense. So in this case, it's definitely what would need that kind of stats. Personally, I would probably go HP over the flat attack, and then keep in the defense and roll the defense higher. And then it could end up at a lot of units. A lot of support units also rather have HP and defense, of course, and then high speed. And most of the damage dealing units still want to have some crit rate. Unless you go for crit rate 4, then it could still kind of work. But then most of the time, they still want their HP in there. So for me personally, I would go HP over the flat attack. It's also slightly higher roll than the defense. And from that, you can make your way work with that. This one, it is in German, but this is the crit damage. And then we could add in defense over here. Or you could remove the crit damage over here. So in this case, it isn't a vampire rune. Vampire rune in most cases would be dealing damage. And then I would say it's just like also because the HP is pretty much a low roll, then it's not worth that much. But from there, we can also start looking at like, okay, let's say that you want to place it on a unit that doesn't need any crit damage. Can't really think of something for specific on vampire. Let's say that this was a violent rune. So we're just making the assumption it's a violent rune because that works better for my example. Then it's this crit damage against this HP. So what we could then do is, it's very simple. We have a base HP. We have a percentage of an HP gives this much flat, but this much flat gives this much percentage. Simple as that. So if we were to look at this rune, we would be looking at a 137. We could max up that by a 550. So let's say that we're not going to fully get that max around there. So let's say we get like a 600, which would be about like a 5% on a percentage HP stat if the base was this much. If it would be on a lower base unit, let's say we're using it on a low base unit, then it would be about 6%. So it is not that much in general, but let's say that this was a high roll. Let's say it was like a 300 and then we could have gotten like a 750 in or something. That's where you already see like on a low HP unit, it is pretty much as just a full roll of a percentage HP in there. So it kind of depends where you want to place it once again. But in this case, since it is vampire, most likely you just want to put defense in here or crit rate in here, depending on where you want to use it and if you need that crit rate or not. But that is probably the main way to go. This one over here, it's also in German. So once again, bear with me. Although some of those are just in like French or German, so it looks a little bit different. But pretty sure that this is the crit damage, not the crit rate. Could be wrong in that. But let's assume it is crit damage. You have these stats next to it. Few options you could go for. You could say flat attack in here and make it kind of like a Sonya rune. Because in the end, flat attack, you could still add up towards like 60 flat attack that way. And the odds of you using this rune in another scenario where it's not just a full-on damage rune and these two stats are kind of wasted regardless is pretty big. So I would say either flat attack or crit damage in here for the HP, because it's just going to be a nuke rune regardless. Because in normal RTA kind of style, This is not really used for anything bruiser related, in my opinion. This one, I have to zoom in a little bit. Let's see what we have over here. We have the slot 1 wheel crit rate over here. Okay, so we have the HP in there. Oh yeah, it's ancient. Makes sense. So yeah, it's going to be removing the resistance. But then removing the resistance for what? Because will runes, sure, you can put it on a Leo counter. Because on Leo itself, it doesn't make that much sense. Because, well, will runes on Leo just don't make that much sense. Leo counter is an option, so attack in the resistance would make most sense. I think I would just keep it at that, because that's also giving you most chance of using it in PvE, like, let's say, an R5 Team Bilger, or let's say your PC Abyss or SF Abyss, you still use some will runes in there, so I would definitely remove the resistance. I wouldn't put speed on there, though. You could, however, put speed in there and then maybe say like a Diana rune, but Diana in the end also kind of wants to have attack in there, so I would just remove the resistance for attack. This one, once again, pretty much a full-on damage rune. In this one, the case was also the question of, okay, should I go for 70 flat attack or for a 10 crit damage? So 70 flat attack is the max, 40 plus the 30, and crit damage 10 is the highest. I would say that most of the time, if you use a fatal-based unit, you're looking at a unit with high base attack. If the unit already is high base attack, let's say a Lucian or something, 70 flat attack is not going to add more than 10% crit damage. But that is something you can use in a damage calculator, such as that you have on swap, to actually calculate what is higher. But I would say most of the time, it's kind of like a rule of thumb, like 100 attack is equal to 10 crit damage. Or, well, I would say 10 crit damage in most cases worth more than 100 attack. So that is kind of the rule of thumb you can use for that. It's not always exactly the case, but if you keep that in mind, then you can definitely say like 10 crit damage would do more for you for sure. Pretty interesting one as well. It's definitely a full-on nuker rune. You could say in this case, I'm gonna up the speed to potentially get 5 speed extra, but I would definitely go flat attack in here. I think flat attack just adds so much more value, because by max you could add like 5 extra speed, but that is on a legendary, and then flat attack you could add even already just on heroes, you can add like 50 flat attack. So definitely would go flat attack in the resistance over here. This one, pretty solid rune, pretty weird rune as well, because, well, you could use it on a few units, such as a Vitra or a Despair Leo May on siege defense or something like that. Then the big question is, what do you change over here? Because the crit rate is kind of weird, but already speed, attack, and defense is already in there, right? So what could you do? Well, in the case of Leo May has pretty low base HP. So I would personally go for adding in flat HP over here, because the flat HP could go all the way up to, like, if you go double legendary, you could go close to like 1100. I think Leo May base HP is somewhere around like 9,000, a little bit more, like closing in on 10,000. Adding in 1100 flat HP on her is an insane amount of stats. So personally, I would probably remove the crit rate for flat HP. Were you to be in need later for getting in accuracy, you could still put accuracy in it later. Were you to say like, hey, I'm gonna do defense over defense and try to get an 11 on that, or 12 or whatever, then sure, but you will always keep this crit rate. So I think the rune becomes more all-round by removing this crit rate rather than the defense. Was it different where the defense was a 5 roll and the crit rate was a 6 roll? Then I would have removed the defense to become an 11, because then the defense is that much more upgradable, whereas a 7 is already a pretty decent roll in my opinion. Kind of the same thing goes for this rune. It has all of the good stats already. All of the stats that you normally want to grind are in there already. So it's removing the accuracy regardless. I would definitely not put attack over attack in any kind of shape or way. But then it's the big question, where does this rune end up at? I would say in most cases, let's say it ends up at like a Chandra slot 6 or an Ashur slot 6 or whatever, where you need to have more flat HP. I would definitely go for flat HP in here. Do you need the accuracy? I would go accuracy in there. It's just as simple as it is. In here, more of a damage kind of style of rune. I would definitely say that this for me would personally end up at like a Leo or something. Yeah, that's probably the only way that I would do it. This would for me end up at a Leo, and in that case, I wouldn't put attack over attack. I think that's the only logical way to go for this. Like, sure, Leo can add some more defense, but since you already have like pretty high crit damage in there, that would work. Were you to put this rune something completely different, let's say that you always use a Helena next to, well, Helena also still uses attack. Thinking about a unit that just purely scales off HP that you would put next to a Leo on 0 speed. Can't really think of one, but let's say that there is one. Then you could still go for like a crit rate over the attack if you really don't need the attack. But I think in most cases, most HP scalers still somewhat scale with attack, and I think the attack will help you out the most in here. Plus, it's also not going to ruin the rune. Let's say that you suddenly want to place it somewhere else and you want to get speed in here. Speed over attack is still fine because it's probably based then on an HP and crit damage dealer rather than an attack-based damage dealer in the first place. Also an interesting one on here, 23 crit rate on a crit damager. So the HP is already in there. I would personally probably go for a speed in here. With the speed, you can still fix it to a certain way where it is usable on Diana, maybe. It is definitely going to be here. Is it really an RTA unit that much? Well, it does have grindable in here, grindable in there. I think with speed, it's the only way that you can actually use it towards RTA. If you don't want to use it in RTA or you just want to put it on a Leo or whatnot, then you've just put defense over the defense. 5 HP is somewhat on the low side, but I think defense percent over this is still higher value than going higher on the HP itself. But then again, you can kind of use this in similar state with the defense and then check like, okay, let's say that the defense base is a 650. And with a 650, the max that we could add in on flat defense, wait, what is the flat defense roll on it that we had? We had a 16. 16, we could make a 47. So we have a 46, sorry. So we have a 46, so an 8% is 52 flat. So that is kind of where you can see already. It's like, okay, if 46... which you could add in max, is pretty much almost as high as a full roll. However, if we were to put in the defense and then also gem defense and grind defense, then we would be looking at like an 18%. So that's kind of the difference where you can see it's like, okay, we could have added in 117 flat defense by adding in a defense percent in here, compared to adding in a 46 defense for just keeping the defense roll and then going for a higher HP roll. And then you can do the same thing for HP and then kind of make the trade-off like, okay, how much HP or defense does that unit have? Because in this case, we're looking at a unit with 650 base defense, which is really low. Some units are more like towards 700, and then the numbers, of course, kind of change. But personally, I would probably put defense in here because that also doesn't ruin the rune in case that in a later state I want to be like, oh no, wait, I actually need this for speed. Whereas if I were to put HP over here will always stay and I'm never going to put speed over here then later, right? So that's kind of the thing. If you remove the flat defense in here, you're not going to ruin the rune. Interesting one over here as well. I crit damage on a Despair. There's actually not too many units that really need this in the first place. Could say an Antares, but Antares does really want to have attack HP in this slot as well. So it's definitely a really weird one where I would say this probably gets used at some kind of broken set. So if it's just a broken set, just very simple, def flat to attack percent and just use it whenever you need like this high crit damage rune where probably it could end up at like a Zyros or something where your Zyros just as like a rage set plus a broken set, doesn't need the accuracy, doesn't need the crit rate, and then this is usable by just the crit damage, bit of speed, and then attack in there. This was also an interesting one. This was the question, should I remove the crit damage? Because in the end, it did roll once in crit damage. Definitely an unfortunate roll because any of the other 3 rolls would have been a lot better. But personally, I would say yes, I would remove the crit damage here because I think in this kind of rune with high speed, it is most likely more value to have accuracy in there and HP in there. Well, HP, 100%, that's not a doubt. But the accuracy, there's a lot of units that would use this accuracy as well. You could think about like an Ashur, you could think about a Chandra. Sure, the Chandra can also use this crit damage, but I think that a defense percentage in here would probably do more for that unit specific. Also, there's a lot of units that wouldn't really need the crit damage. Let's say you put this on a Gianna, or you put this on any kind of like fast stripping unit. You don't really need that crit damage. Then the question, attack or defense? Well, that highly depends on where you're going to put it on. Let's say that you put it on a fast Vio Moor or something. Then it's, of course, attack. Let's say you put it on a Gianna. Probably still attack. Let's say you put it on something that's it's just an AoE strip and has to be fast. Then, of course, it's defense. This one, we have a 28 at the speeds. This one is actually pretty interesting. So my thought process on this one is the following. 28 speed on the shield, for me, most likely would end up at a miles. That's the only thing that I would like to put this fast a quarter speed on. But then the big question is, do we remove the crit rate, the attack, or the HP? Because in the end, crit rate is the highest roll already. It would make sense to say, like, okay, attack is the lowest roll. I would redo that and then make that higher. But technically, yes and no. And the reason for the no is because if I put this on the miles, attack is pretty much useless. So there's a few options here that you could go for, and the personal option that I would go for is removing the attack, but removing the attack for flat HP. Then in any given point later in the game where I would be like, hey, wait, I don't need the flat HP on it anymore. I do actually want to go for attack on it because I can use it in whatever kind of other nuker build, because I suddenly have like a, let's say, an Ethna that can be on double shield and therefore make a lot of sense. Then still with that attack, it's a lot more value than removing that crit rate. Because sure, Miles also doesn't need the crit rate. He doesn't need the crit rate as much as he doesn't need the attack, more or less. But that keeps the rune more all-round. And if you would remove the crit rate, you would definitely ruin the rune, kind of, because it's just a very good roll already. So I would remove the attack percentage for a flat HP, because that gives me the most options of having the rune usable in a later state as well. Which may sound a little weird, but I think that that is the way to go. Sure, if you want to go purely, it's like you're going to know, like, okay, 100,000%, it's just going to be Miles, nothing else than Miles, and just Miles. Then I would probably remove the crit rate for a flat HP. But that's always like, there's not just one correct answer. It's kind of like, how do you want to use it? Where do you want to use it? But also future planning, like, let's say I get this unit or that unit, or they bring out something new. What will be most useful for that rune? So for me, in best case, HP on the flat HP on the attack percent, with me having the chance to later say at a later state, like, okay, no, wait, I actually do want to get like a 21 attack in here, or even 23 attack in here, and it ends up at a Sonya or something, because that would be a really good Sonya rune too. An HP 28er on speed with flat defense and resistance. So this one is kind of interesting too, because let's say that you want to end this up at an Angela. At an Angela, accuracy is the most useless stat. But let's say you end this up at a Cigar, then all stats are kind of useful, even the resistance. So this one is for me a little bit hard to say. Then it's highly the value of like, okay, do we care more about 40 defense or 7 resistance? That is kind of my trade. Like in the end, you're most likely gonna put defense percent on this. Accuracy is good for pretty much everything except if you want to put it on an Angela or like the pure vanilla cookies or those things, because they don't need any accuracy, but I wouldn't remove the accuracy because that kind of ruins the rune for future purposes as well. So in this case, personally, I think I would remove the resistance, because resistance in the end can be kind of fake, whereas defense flat is just defense flat. Especially if you were to put it on, let's say, a Carnal or something. Carnal-based defense is like, I think like 650 or something. So then adding 40 extra defense is a decent amount. That's like a 5.7% of a HP or of a defense in the first place. So yeah, that's pretty decent. So I would probably put defense over the resistance in here. This rune, pretty good rune. 24 on 23. In this case, I think it's just those simple facts, HP over crit damage. That's just the main thing that you want to do. You could say, no, I would just HP over crit damage. That's just a simple one. In most cases, crit rate has more value than crit damage. Few units out there that will guarantee crit, but then again, looking at a Chandra, for example, Chandra doesn't need any attack, so this is not going to end up in a Chandra regardless. Another interesting rune, I would definitely go keep in the flat HP over here and remove the accuracy, and mainly because the accuracy is a super low roll. And then the big question is, do you want to put it on a Leo? If so, you can put defense in here. If you want to look at more towards a Diana kind of rune or something, then I would put speed in here, but that highly depends on where you want to use it. But in both cases, the Leo and the Diana, I would keep the HP and I would remove the accuracy, because, well, if the accuracy was an 8, it could be more debatable of like, okay, what has higher value to it, where you're going to use it. But then again, this is still going to end up at like 700 plus HP, and 700 plus HP at most units, 700 is still like a good 6.4%, so that's close to one full max roll, or, well, 75% of a max full roll, but yeah, that's still a decent amount of flat HP in there, and especially if it's an accuracy 4 is like, But accuracy 8, then it could have been more debatable of like, okay, what's more value for the specific unit you want to use it on. But even in that case, I would probably still opt for removing the accuracy. Okay, in here we have a 27. This one is kind of rough too, because Blade mostly does make you get the feeling towards like, okay, I want to put crit rate on it or crit damage. But all of these stats are pretty much screaming of like, I just want to be a weird-ass bruiser-ish rune and maybe just a broken set. Because by the technical values of this, HP over HP would probably be the highest value by a really long shot. But then again, crit rate would probably do more for you. But then again, it's also the question, what is more value, 8 defense or 6 HP? Which one do you remove? Or do you actually remove the accuracy? This one for me is, I would say, the hardest one from all of the options that I've seen so far. Let me actually know in the comments what you would do on this one. Because in this one, I think I would just store it for a while and then just see like until I get the point like, hey, now I know very specific where I want to use it. Because to use this on an Etna, you would probably have to put I would say probably crit rate over the defense is probably the highest value. Same thing if you want to put it towards Sonya, crit rate over the defense is the highest value. But let's say that this is your fastest rune altogether and you use it as a broken set, then HP over HP would probably be in higher value. Or if you use it on a unit that doesn't need any accuracy, then again, Sonya skill 1 and Etna skill 2, skill 3 still want some accuracy. So the 8 accuracy is actually really nice. There's a lot of back and forth on this. I would probably, if I had this kind of rune, I actually do have a similar rune, which is a little bit faster than this one, but I do have a similar rune. But it does actually have the HP and defense, and then the last slot was useless, and then, oh no, wait, I had HP and crit rate, and then the last slot I put defense on, or HP on, or the other way around, one of the two. But yeah, it actually has all 3 of those stats, and then I could choose to grind like the HP itself. So that makes it a little bit easier rather than this one where you would say like, okay, I'm not sure which one I want to grind because you still want to get that crit rate in. For me personally, I think crit rate over defense. But once again, this is the one where you literally have like 3 options and none of the options are necessarily bad. All of the options are possible and it's just highly depending on where and how you want to use it. This one is also pretty interesting. So we have an intangible, we have flat HP, HP percent, and defense. You could say HP over HP, but then you could also say HP over here. So flat HP over flat HP or HP percent over HP percent. I think you would end up with pretty much the same numbers if you would make this a 400 base to comparing to making this like an 11 base. And then again, you're probably going to have more flat HP legendaries than HP percent legendaries. But then there's also the question, crit rate. If you were to put crit rate on it, especially on an HP type of damage dealer or something, then removing the defense would be the highest value. So this is kind of similar to the previous one, where all 3 stats could get the gem, and none of the answers are necessarily wrong, it's just depending on where and how you want to use it. But that makes it also for these kind of runes the most difficult. Looking at this one, well, this is definitely this is definitely not a defense percenter, because the defense percenter isn't here. Yeah, this is always those kind of awkward runes, where it's like, okay, I want to put defense in here. Oh, wait, defense is in there. But the attack is already in there as well. So what we could do is we could put flat HP over resistance. I think 8 resistance compared to 5 accuracy. I would rather keep 5 accuracy than 8 resistance in most cases, depending if you go for a unit that wants to get high resistance in the first place. If you want to get high resistance, then keep that. And then, well, maybe you don't need the accuracy. Could be a thing. But I think I would put flat HP in here. Depending where I would want to use that, maybe flat defense if the unit has very low base defense and very high base HP. Could be a thing in here. But I would change one of those two, the one that I definitely don't use, and probably it's going to be resistant and then either flat defense or flat HP. Then the final one for today, it's looking like this. In this case, you kind of want to get the crit rate on, I would say. Because if you go for a nuker, most of the time you do want to get crit rate. But I would probably say just attack over attack, because this attack percent, you can add in 6 more attack percent with just a hero. So that will make this an 11, and I think that has more value than putting like crit rate over here and this, keeping this to like a maximum potential on hero like a 12. So this could be an 18 where it's now a 12. Is that right? Is about right, I guess. But yeah, the flat HP is already, this is near a max roll. I think max roll on flat HP is like 350 or something. So I would probably do attack over attack. So yeah, that's all about for it for now. I hope you kind of felt and got the idea of my thought process of what I want to do when I put in a gem. Also, if you're still not sure, feel free to join the Discord. In the Discord, either me or someone else will reply to you of saying what they would recommend you to do with the gem. And if you're really not sure, I would just wait until you get the specific unit or the specific slot that you really want to use that rune at, and then go for the grind, because it's not too bad to wait with it. But then again, if you wait until, well, I don't know when, and you're never actually going to use it, it's never going to be an upgrade. So anything that you don't use is never an upgrade, and that doesn't help neither. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed this one and learned a thing or two, and hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.